Rome, 1st century AD. In the markets of Alexandria, a mathematician named Hero builds a strange bronze sphere that spins on jets of steam. He calls it a curiosity. History calls it a mist revolution. Now imagine a different patron, not a philosopher, but a Roman senator, hungry for an edge against Parthia. He doesn't see a toy, he sees an engine, and he writes a check that changes the timeline. Within a decade, Roman engineers, already masters of aqueducts and concrete, turn that spinning toy into pistons. The first steam foundries rise outside Ostia, fed by iron from Hispania and coal hauled in by the legions. It's a small decision. One patron, one engine, one foundry. But across the empire, it begins to compound. In our next chapter, we follow that compounding effect into the legions themselves. By the second decade, the foundries outside Ostia stop building toys and start building weapons. Smiths fuse piston technology into siege engines, and for the first time, a Roman workshop sounds like a machine, not a forge. On the training fields outside Rome, legionaries drill with something new. Steam-assisted ballistae that reload in seconds and armored carts that move under their own power. The legion is no longer just disciplined, it's mechanized. Word reaches the frontier provinces and production scales fast. Within a generation, entire legions are outfitted with steam-forged armor and self-propelled siege towers, built faster, cheaper, and tougher than anything the old world has ever fielded. An emperor watching this parade sees more than a stronger army. He sees an empire that no longer has to wait on wind or muscle. Next, that ambition turns to the sea, and the Mediterranean itself becomes Rome's testing ground. Roman shipwrights at Misenum strip the oars from an old quinquereme and boat on something new, a coal-fired engine driving a paddle wheel. It's slow, it's loud, and it terrifies every sailor who sees it move without wind. For the first time in naval history, a Roman fleet moves on its own schedule. No wind, no rowers, no waiting on the weather. They cross the Mediterranean in days others need weeks for, and the empire's reach quietly doubles. Pirate strongholds that survived for centuries by outrunning Roman oars can't outrun Roman coal. One by one, the hideouts along Cilicia and the African coast go quiet, and Mediterranean trade becomes, for the first time, almost entirely Roman. By the end of this chapter, the Mediterranean isn't just Rome's highway, it's Rome's machine room. And a fleet that never has to wait for wind is about to start asking what else doesn't have to wait. Next, an empire without limits. By mid-century, Roman engineers extend iron rails from Hispania to the Rhine. Steam locomotives hauling grain and legions cut travel time from weeks to days, and for the first time, the empire moves at the speed of its machines, not its roads. But machines that do the work of 1,000 slaves raise an uncomfortable question. Freedmen flood into factory towns. The enslaved population shrinks for the first time in Roman history, and a new, restless urban class begins asking what their place in this empire actually is. Coal and iron become currencies of their own. New colonies rise in Britannia and Germania, built purely to feed the furnaces, and a merchant class grows wealthier than half the Senate. Wealth measured now in tons of ore, not acres of land. From his palace, the emperor looks out over a province transformed beyond recognition and feels invincible. But an empire expanding this fast, this unevenly, is also an empire stretched thinner than it's ever been. Next, what happens when the machine finally breaks? By the 3rd century, the old cracks resurface. Plague, civil war, a debased currency. But now steam rails and coal fleets spread the crisis faster than any messenger ever could, turning a regional fever into an empire-wide one in weeks instead of years. This Rome runs on coal from Britannia and iron from Hispania, and that dependency cuts both ways. When Germanic raiders strike a key mining province, it doesn't just cost territory. It starves furnaces 1,000 miles away. Factories that once ran day and night fall silent. Legions that depended on steam transport find themselves stranded on the wrong side of the empire. And an urban underclass with no farmland to retreat to has nowhere left to go but the streets. So would a steam-powered Rome have ruled 1,000 years longer? Or collapsed in decades instead of centuries, undone by the very speed that made it great? That's the question history almost had to answer. And that's our turning point for today.